Good morning and welcome to the March monthly DAC Webcast. I'm Jennifer Stafford, the Director in the Division of Assessment and Accountability Support, and we welcome you here today. We have a big agenda. It is a busy time in Kentucky, and we are preparing for spring 2021 assessment. So we've got a lot of updates for you, a lot of information that we want to share with the district assessment coordinators and the building assessment coordinators and everyone watching today to make sure that you know the current status on where we stand with all assessments and accountability. We have a full agenda. We have several guests with us today. I want to welcome our guests from ACT, Colin Dingler, and our guests from the Office of Career and Technical Education, Kylie Whitaker. They join Chris Williams, Shara Savage, Kevin O'Hare, Ben Riley, and Jason Howard today from the Division of Assessment and Accountability Support. If you have questions, please email dacinfo@education.ky.gov. Jason is monitoring that email for us today. Pam Powers is off doing administration code and inclusions of special populations training today. So Jason is looking at and monitoring the email account for your questions. If we'll look at the slide now, Helen, the next one has the agenda. We're going to start out off with some current discussions that we're having on regulation changes. We'll move into our updates that will include access. We have begun access testing, so we want to make sure that you are up to date and have some new information on access testing. We want to give you some reminders about SDRR and ACT. We've had a successful first test window 1 beginning, and we want to give you some lessons learned from that first and second day of testing. We'll turn it over at that point to Kylie Whitaker with career and technical education updates, and then follow up with test updates on K-Screen as well as K-Prep and alternate K-Prep. Then I'll be back at the end to talk about the assessment and accountability updates that will include the social studies field test tentatively scheduled, as well as the updated USED waiver. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to the birthday girl, Chris Williams. Oh, no, I'm not going to turn it over to her. It's me first. We have some regulations changes that we want to make you aware of. We've mentioned a couple times on this broadcast that the U.S. Department of Education monitors all of our title programs. And with the title program audit that was conducted in the summer of last year, the U.S. Department of Education did find and identify some findings that as a department we have to correct, and we have to demonstrate that we are taking steps to amend some of our policies. With the result of those findings in that federal monitoring of our title programs, we do have to amend our administrative regulations in specifically 703 KAR 5:240, which is the accountability administrative procedures and guidelines, as well as 703 KAR 5:070, which is the inclusions of special populations in state required assessment and accountability. So if we go to the next slide, Helen, we'll see that these two regulations have specific changes that need to be made on those, which include for the accountability administration procedures and guidelines, the removal of the extraordinary circumstance exemption. We've noted for you before on this broadcast that with the finding, we can no longer provide that extraordinary circumstance exemption, that the U.S. Department of Education only will approve medical non-participations. And as a district assessment coordinator and building assessment coordinator, you've been aware of those changes because of the changes that we're making to the SDRR spring rosters and then the fall data cleanup. So those are not new changes that you're unaware of, but what we did want to make you aware of is that we're now going in and taking the step to amend the regulation. The second thing will be new for you, and Helen, if you'll go to slide 5. The inclusions of special populations in state-required accountability programs, the change and the finding that the U.S. Department of Education found was that Kentucky as a state was not allowing our kindergarten screen students to exit, that the department had not established exit criteria for our kindergarten students. So at that point, when they provided the guidance that that every state must provide that exit criteria, then Kentucky is going to provide the students in kindergarten, our EL students, the opportunity to exit. And so we're taking the step to amend the regulation of 703 KR 5:070 to include the possibility for our kindergarten students to exit. So those two regulations will be amended in the upcoming few months. The next couple of steps that it's taking, that will take to amend these, is that first we will discuss these change to these regulations with our SCAC advisory board, and that is the School Curriculum Assessment and Accountability Council. They meet next week, so this will be discussed, both of these changes will be discussed with that advisory council, as well as the local superintendent advisory council will hear these changes that will be made or proposed to these regulations. After those two meetings, then the first read of the amended regulations will take place at the April 7th Kentucky Board of Education meeting. So those are the next few steps that we'll take on rectifying the findings that the U.S. Department of Education found during that federal audit. So I'll turn it now over to the birthday girl, Chris Williams, who has specific information about our exiting criteria for our kindergarten students, as well as other friendly reminders and updates for our access testing. So Chris.
Thank you, Jennifer. But I do want to give a shout out too, because I'm not the only one who has a birthday today, but we also have one of our DACs, Jana Beth Francis in Davies County, who shares, we're both birthday girls together. So we've already been communicating this morning through email. So happy birthday, Jana Beth. So let's start with access, and let's just give you a few updates and a few little tips for the access testing that has already started. Like Jennifer said, it has been going very well so far, as well as ACT. And then our rosters have also been open as well. So let's get into access, and let's talk about that kindergarten access. Some of the things I just want to remind you about is we've been getting some questions on the kindergarten kits. And people say, well, Chris, you know, can I laminate those? You know, what can I do, you know, to kind of help with the, you know, with the safety guidelines that we have in place that we're supposed to be following, you know, during access testing? Well, one of the things that you can do with that, of course, you can't laminate the storyboard, because, with kindergarten, they have lots of manipulatives that come in that kindergarten kit. So what you want to do is, of course, you're going to have to wipe that down after each use. And it's already laminated. So let's move into the little picture cards, because, there's a stack of those that come with those. And some of the tips that I have for you is you can go the long route and, laminate those and, cut those out. And, I remember doing that as a teacher, and that does take a long time. So I'm going to give you the shortest version for you to help you, because it's always nice to, I know you're busy and you may not have a lot of time to do that. So one thing you can do is that you can take those individual picture cards and you can put them in each Ziploc baggie. And then you can also give the student a pencil when they're administering, because with kindergarten, it is administered, paper pencil, and you have your storyboard, your picture cards, you have their test booklet, you have your script to follow, all right out in front of you. And so what you want to do is, with putting them in the baggie, you can give the student a pencil, and then that student can point to those picture cards that they need while they're all spread out on the table. And then that way, it would be easy for you just to, you could either clean the pencil if you want to, or you can give it to that student if you have plenty of pencils on hand to act as a pointer. So that's just one of the little tips for you for kindergarten. I do want to talk to you, because Jennifer has talked to you already about the, exit criteria. She's talked to you that we're going to have to be able to, starting from this year and beyond, be able to exit our kindergarten on the access. So if our kindergarten students at the, when you get your results back this summer, and you see that, that you see online, or you get the paper copies, you'll be able to see that if a student scored an overall composite of a 4.5 on the kindergarten, because remember, kindergarten does not have tier levels. So if they score that, they'll be able to exit this year off of access. And so that is a new thing for you. So just want to give you a heads up on that one. And let's talk about go into some of our online testing, because online testing, you have to, when you get a student in, you have to enter those students into WIDA-MS if they're testing online. If they're kindergarten or alternate, of course, they're going to take the paper assessment along with accommodated students as well for paper. But let's talk about that online. When you get to the online, what you're going to have to do is just some tips for you is we have each year that, when you get into online, that sometimes, we have kids, because I know when I'm in a chair or whatever, I like to wiggle and move. So I know they do too. And so sometimes when they're taking the speaking and they have those headphones on, sometimes they pull that out of the computer that they're on, or laptop, or Chromebook, whichever they're using. And so just as you're monitoring, make sure that you do perform before they even begin those microphone checks to make sure that the student is recording their voice, that you can also see the recording of them as you're monitoring, and make sure, because sometimes what they like to do, and I know it doesn't happen very often, but some of them like to put their microphones into other computers. So you have to be careful that that it is in their right computer that they're using. So that way that doesn't happen, because if that happens, it won't record what the student has said. And so just kind of give you a tip on that one. Just make sure that it is recording when the student is speaking into the microphone. One of the things people ask too is, what about mask? Will mask interfere with access testing? It will not. WIDA has done already some cognitive labs with students with the mask. especially when it comes to speaking as well, and it has not interfered with the recordings of the student speaking through, the microphone and it recording their answers. So just want to give you that particular one. And of course, your students are already, were already pre-populated for you. If they were in Infinite Campus, prior to our pools, because we did open that back in December. And then we did load a new file back at the end of February for you as well, to catch any, any new students who are transferring, from district to district as well. So now, if you've got any students who have come in after, that February pool at the end of February, that what you'll want to do is you'll have to go in manually and add them to a WIDA AMS and put them into a test session and test those students. Now, we also want to talk to you about the paper assessment. I also talked to you about the first one, but let's talk about accommodations, because some people get a little bit confused when it comes to accommodations for access. The only way that you can have accommodations on the access assessment is if you have an IEP or 504. No PSPs, because remember, with this assessment, we are testing how they are acquiring the English language proficiency, not how are they learning the content. So that's a difference between access and the K-Prep assessment. And if you are testing a student paper pencil, you'll want to mark the accommodations on the back of the test booklet for a student who has an IEP or 504. Also, we have very wonderful resources from WIDA. We have the accommodations and supplement manual that if you are given any accommodations, you should be looking through that supplement, because it also has wonderful things at the very back of it that you can print off and you can give your test administrators, so that way they know what accommodations they're supposed to give for students with disabilities who have an IEP and need accommodations on regular access, as well as accommodations for students who have an IEP on alternate access with significant cognitive disabilities. And it has also, any accommodations for access, for our IEP students. Those are also listed by domain, and they will tell you, which domain that student can have those accommodations on, that is on their current IEP that you have in their district. So remember that even though, there are accommodations, that we have certain accommodations that you can have for each assessment. So you want to look at that supplement for those specific accommodations. And then for K-Prep, of course, we always put in the manual which accommodations for ELs that you can have for them. And then for ACT, we have those EL supports that we have for English learners. So remember, accommodations are appropriate for each assessment. So be looking at those manuals to be able to assist you. Now, another change for this year is our alternate access students who are kindergarten. In the past, we used to be able to, because there wasn't provided from WIDA an alternate access for kindergarten students. So if your district has identified any kindergarten alternate assessment students, access students, what you're going to do is you're going to give those students, there's not going to be any more extraordinary circumstances for that particular student. What you'll want to do is you will give that student the regular access for kindergarten, and provide them with accommodations as well, because they do have an IEP, and so they are can have accommodations on access. Now, that concludes that. So I just want to give you some more tips for just general things for you when it comes to testing, whether you're testing online, whether you're testing, paper pencil for access, is that, you should have read all the manuals prior to testing. And like I said, if you had any accommodations, you should have looked over that accommodations and accessibility supplement. And people ask me, now, Chris, where can I find that? You can find that on the WIDA website underneath the secure portal. And you can also see copies of the manuals. And if you need, more manuals, you can be able to print those manuals off of that website as well. And then also, there's also on that secure portal is another thing for, it's called the assessment best practices best practices for access during COVID-19. And that is something that WIDA has given, some tips for to help you with testing. And one of those is what I talked about with the kindergarten, that is also in that manual as well. So just be looking over those best practices. Make sure that all your personnel have been trained with the administration code and inclusions of special populations. They've went over the access PowerPoints and things like that, trainings that are on the KDE website. That they also have on the WIDA website have went through and taken all the necessary quizzes to be able to give the access assessments this year. Also, with your technology, you want to make sure that your district technology coordinator has downloaded the latest software and the technology requirements that are for both the screener and for the assessment, because that'll come, that way you'll have less issues with technology. We also have sent that out multiple times in emails, Monday DAC emails. I know DRC has sent out some information to their technology coordinators. And I know Paul Shoemaker in the department has also has talked with a lot of the district technology coordinators with the access assessment this year with those technology requirements. And don't forget that you do have checklists, both as a DAC, as a BAC, and as a test administrator. There are checklists on the access, on the Kentucky's access page, that will talk about our member page on the Kentucky page of the WIDA website. Has those checklists for both online, what a DAC, a BAC, or a test administrator is required to do, and also for paper as well. So there's two different checklists. Also, our technology coordinators also have a checklist that kind of keeps them, and they have to sign off to say that they've done that particular checklist, and their checklist is not on the members page of the of the Kentucky, the WIDA website. It is on the WIDA AMS, because that's where the software and requirements and things like that for our technology technology coordinators need. So just remember that's in WIDA AMS for our technology coordinators, and then the checklist for everyone else is on the Kentucky member page. Also, you want to make sure that you always maintain test security. You have to follow all of our test security that we have listed to in our trainings for administration code, and also follow the guidelines underneath the inclusion of special populations training. And one of those things in the administration code training is about the cell phones. You want to be careful with the cell phones in the area, because, it should be, according to your district policy, whether you take those up, or if you leave them out, to make sure that you take them onto, in a baggie onto the desk if the student doesn't want to give that up. So, always make sure those are turned off during testing, and that the student is not in use, and because, we don't want that to lead to an allegation during access testing. Another thing is required are seating charts. There are individual and group seating charts that are required for all of our state required assessments and even access. So you can get those off of our KDE website underneath the forms page or the KPrep page, because it also links to that. And there are also lots of links on our KDE on the access page as well to help you with access testing. Test tickets. Let's talk about those test tickets. Test tickets are to be kept secure. And those are for individual students and you have to print out a test ticket for all the 4 domains of listening, speaking, reading, and writing for the student. You print those out in WIDA AMS, and you want to make sure that when you are printing those out, that you print those out prior to testing and keep those secure, even before and after testing, because when testing is over with, you would have to give those back to your building assessment coordinators as well for them to destroy securely once testing is completed for that student. Another thing is about test tickets is you want to make sure that the test tickets are given to the correct student when they sit down. You want to verify that that student has their correct test ticket because we don't want that to lead to an allegation as well of giving a student the wrong test ticket and they take the wrong assessment, under someone else's. So just want to give you that one. Another thing is with the kindergarten WAPT or the WIDA online screener for grades 1 through 12. You want to make sure that you have given any new student that is coming into your district who may be out of country or new and has not taken the screener yet and is a potential EL student. Could be a potential EL student based off what they put on the home language survey. Another language is given. What you're going to do is you're going to give that screener prior to given access during the window if they enroll in your district. But if they've already been to another district in Kentucky, you want to verify that they have already been given the screener. And if not, then you want to make sure you've given that screener and enter that information into Infinite Campus because that's very important. Because we know they're very mobile and they move from one district to the next. You also want to follow all the, Healthy at School guidelines. We do have guidelines for the safety expectations and best practices for our schools. You always want to follow those guidelines, when you're bringing students who are either, in person, or if they're hybrid and, coming in, certain days, or if you're bringing in your virtual students, for in small groups, if for parents who will allow virtual students to come in. You want to follow all those guidelines. One thing is that if you need to order additional materials, you will do that in WIDA AMS. So it's kind of like what you did back in October. You will log into WIDA AMS. You will be, as a DAC, you will be able to go in underneath materials, go to the additional order one and then select the administration year. And then that will allow you to, and then, your district will already be in there. Choose what schools you would like to order additional materials for, and then you can add order and be able to order for those particular schools in your district anytime during the window that is opened. But it will close for additional materials usually a week prior to the end of our testing window, and our testing window is March 1st through April 23rd. So a week prior to that 23rd deadline, you'll want to make sure that you have put in any additional orders that you have. And remember that for our students who are taking online, in grades 1 through 3, the only thing that they need for paper materials would be the writing booklet. And so that's the only thing you would order for them when you're putting in additional order. Everything else they take online. And then, with the grades 1 through 3, that once they've taken the listening and the reading domain, that you go into WeedAMS and there is a tier level report that will tell you which booklet to pull for that particular student, whether it be A or BC. And you don't have to make that decision because it's already made for you once the student has completed those domains. For our grades 4 through 12, they are taking everything online, and so they don't need any paper materials. Now, for our kindergarten, they're going to need they're going to need all of the manipulatives and things like that, the kit. They're also going to need the test booklet and things like that for their materials. And of course, you can share materials within schools if there's not a pre-ID label that is already on those materials, but you cannot share them, from district to district. So that is one thing that is different with Access compared to our K-Prep assessment. You also want to check with your DAC to see if there's any materials, that they have, because they did receive overage of materials before ordering. Next, Helen. You also want to, just make sure that everything is, like I said, everything is done in WeedAMS for ordering, for your test session, setting up your students in test sessions and testing your students for both the screener and Access. Then for the secure portal, you will have, everything in that for resources for you to be able to do your trainings, your quizzes. And don't forget to look at over also underneath the Kentucky page for your checklist and everything else for that. And then also on that Kentucky page on the WEDA website are also professional development opportunities for your teachers, administrators, your EL coordinators, etc. in your district. So you don't want to forget that, because that is also open already. That opened September 1st through August 31st. And so you have opportunities to get professional development through those self-paced e-learning workshops. And remember, if you still need accounts, you're still able to get those accounts for anyone, who needs to be trained to be able to give that. You want to check with the district assessment coordinator who has the Google form. They'll fill that out, and then I will get you an account and you'll be good to go. So that concludes that one. So let's move into SDRR and let's talk about those rosters, because that for now the Access and alternate access rosters are open in SDRR as well. Those will be those open March 1st and go to April 13th. And also you have the ACT that is also opened yesterday for rosters. That opened March 10th, and it will go to April 30th. Now let's talk about what you're going to do for those particular two, because just as some reminders. You'll notice that when you opened up those access rosters, alternate access rosters, and then you opened up the ACT, that they were blank. That is correct. They will be blank. They're not pre-populated for your students because, we do have because what we want you to do during this time is just to mark any students who, you will add a student only if you need a non-participation that the student is not testing. So that's the only time that you will do that during this time. And then we will close those rosters, and then we will open up in the spring the rosters again for access and alternate access, as well as for K-Prep and the alternate K-Prep. And then we will also have, your post-secondary readiness will also be opened up during that time for those spring rosters, and that opens April the 20th through June 15th. And that's the time when And people say, well, Chris, even though the window closes for access on the 23rd, how come our rosters close on the 13th? It's because we have to close those down to be able to pre-populate your students, when it comes to those test windows, because the K-Prep test windows will be opening soon for you to be able to put your elementary, middle, and high school students in there for those test windows. And remember that to keep your before those K-Prep test windows open for you to be able to, for us to collect that information in SDRR, that you have made sure that your calendars are up to date in Infinite Campus. And if they are, great, because they're going to tell us when the earliest date that you're going to start testing for you to be able to put those windows in. And then also that we will only do one once the collection window for K-Prep test windows opens in SDRR before the spring rosters on April the 20th, before April the 20th. That collection, you will be able to, to see those, to be able to put those windows in. And that another thing is that you will, once we, open that, there will be one more week, in between that we will get a pull from Infinite Campus for that during that collection window. So if you wait till the end to, at the end of the deadline to make sure your calendars are up to date, that will not pull correctly into SDRR. So that's very important key for you. And then don't forget that during spring rosters, all of your information will be pre-populated for you, as well as your 100-day students. And you'll be able to make any changes to that, demographics will be in Infinite Campus. And then you will be able to file any non-participations if you forgot to at the other roster windows. You'll be able to do that as well. And then mark any student who gets accommodations. So there are trainings on that. So Jennifer, I think that concludes it. But I do want to ask Jason if there are any questions that we have before I turn it over to Shara.
That's right. I think we have one question, Chris.
Okay.
So Jason, you want to present that question to Chris?
Yeah. Thank you, Jennifer and Chris. We do have one question. It's about access. Can a kindergartner student exit if they meet the screener benchmark and not have to test and access?
No, because with the screener, you're only testing 2 domains, and so you can't exit because there's, from the kindergarten, but you will be able to exit, from the screener. You won't be able to exit from, but you will be able to exit off of the access assessment of scoring that 4.5 overall composite.
All right, thank you, Chris. That's all the questions we had for your section.
Okay. So like I said, I appreciate your all's time, and thank you all so much for all you do for our English learners. And I'm going to turn it over to my wonderful colleague, Shara Savage, who's going to have some ACT updates. Shara?
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, everyone. On Tuesday, we kicked off our initial testing window. Overall, it has been a successful testing window. We're still in the middle of testing window 1, but I wanted to bring you some updates on some things and some lessons that we have learned during the testing on Tuesday and Wednesday. So first off, TestNav. So Helen, if you'll go to the next screen, there's a screenshot for you of TestNav. Students encountered this screen showed on the slide during the initial test day when attempting to log into TestNav. So be sure that students are selecting ACT on the screen instead of Kentucky to avoid any issues. And then next, so we'll move to the next slide, Helen. The gaming bar and Siri application has also caused a few issues as well. So the game bar is detected by TestNav as an active application and cannot be in operation during a testing session. So please ensure that the game bar is turned off. And additionally, please ensure that the game bar is turned off after any updates occur. So if there's an update that runs, the gaming bar turns back on automatically. So if that occurs, be sure to go in and turn that off. And then the Siri application is also detected by TestNav as an active application and cannot be in operation during the testing session. So again, please ensure that the Siri application is turned off, and if there is an update, you have to go back in and manually shut those off as well. So next, we had some screens to populate for students. And Helen, if you go to the next screen, students was presented with the state use questions. So when students logged in to take the exam online, they were presented with an opportunity to respond to the state use questions. So as a reminder, there are no state use questions associated with the Kentucky State Test Administration. Therefore, students will need to click through the state use question screens before beginning their exam. Students can skip past the state use question screen and move into the examinee agreement screen. And then lastly, I wanted to update you on some meeting dates. So Helen, if you'll go to the next screen. So ACT and OAA are going to continue the office hours through April and through the testing season. So the next one is tomorrow at 11, and Thursday, March 18th at 1 p.m., and then March 26th at 11, and April 1st at 1 p.m. So we invite you and your BACs or your testing coordinators or your TACs to join us. And if you have any questions, we will assist you with getting those answered during that office hour. So next, we have some updates from ACT. I have a special guest with us today. His name is Colin Dingler, and he is from ACT, and he is going to give us some updates regarding the ACT testing. So Colin, I'll turn it over to, well, first, is there any questions regarding the information that I shared just now, the updates?
Sure, we have two questions that have come in.
Okay.
So the first one is, when can ACT online materials be returned?
When can for the test window 1, the ACT has pickup scheduled at the end of the testing window. So the day after the testing window ends, FedEx will attempt, that'll be the attempt number 1 for pickup, and then there's a total of 3 attempts to pick up those materials, and then if still you don't make those dates, then you can call ACT to schedule a pickup time.
Okay, and there's one other one. Can accommodation materials be returned prior to March 22nd if all students have completed them for window 1?
Well, ACT has an that scheduled pickup time after the accommodations test window 1 ends. But you most certainly can call ACT to schedule a pickup if everything is complete.
All right, that's all the questions we have. Great job.
Okay, thank you. All right, Colin, I will now turn everything over to you.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be joining the presentation today. I'm Colin Dingler. I work with the state and federal programs team at ACT, and I'm here to share some information about the content on the ACT reading test. we're making a small update that improves alignment with ELA and literacy standards. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the update that we're making to the content. You can change to the next slide, please. So just to give you a little bit of context here, ACT regularly makes updates to the content on our tests within the domain of the test blueprint. We do this using various sources of evidence. The primary one is the ACT National Curriculum Survey, which we administer every 3 to 4 years. We use other sources of research as well. For example, information from alignment studies with various state standards. The ACT, as you probably know, is a curriculum-based test. So ensuring that the content on the test is current and aligns to state high school curricula is really an important part about a piece of the validity of the test. So to give a little bit of a kind of history in terms of updates that we've made in the English language arts section, going back to 2012, we introduced paired passage units on the reading test. We phased those in starting in 2012. And if you're not familiar with the reading test, those are, that's a certain format of reading passage where the student compares 2 passages on the same topic and answers questions about both of those. In 2014, we updated the test reporting categories. The new reporting categories were designed to show a very clear interpretation along the lines of the Common Core standards. So that update was really about improving score interpretation and alignment. And what I'm here to talk with you about today, starting this spring in 2021, we're adding mixed information formats to the reading test, and I'll describe those in a moment. So why are we making this change? As I said already, this is really part of the content validity of the assessment. And this particular change was driven not only by feedback that we got through the curriculum survey, but also from information from alignment studies that we did to the Common Core standards. It's important for us to be strengthening our alignment because the ACT is used as an accountability measure under ESSA. You can change to the next slide. So what does this content look like? What I have here is not an example of the actual ACT test content, but rather an example of the sort of reading passage that's causing us to add this content. This is an authentic reading passage that shows just one of many examples of what mixed information formats look like. This is from a high school textbook. This is indicative of the kind of reading that students do in terms of informational texts. So what you can see here is embedded within the passage is this chart. It presents information visually. Some of the mixed formats that we're adding onto the test use tables, graphs, figures, diagrams. All of those things fall within this domain of mixed information formats. So again, this isn't an actual screenshot of secure ACT test content. There would be some small differences in terms of the way that ACT formats the content, but this just gives you a sense of the kind of reading that students do in high school every day. It's very familiar. It's very much within the domain of informational reading for in an academic context. If you can change the slide, I'll talk a little bit more about some of the details associated with this update. So I just want to show you how this content fits into the existing ACT reading test blueprint. The reading test has 3 reporting categories, and you'll recognize these as the clusters within the reading standards. Key ideas and details, that's the reporting category with the largest number of items on the test. Craft and structure, and then the 3rd reporting category is integration of knowledge and ideas. This is the reporting category that this new content will be reporting out to. We're adding on tests, as we update and phase in this content, One of the passages in the reading test will include a mixed information format passage, and there will be 2 items of the items associated with that passage. We'll ask the student about the mixed formats. So as you can see, on a 40-item test, these 2 items, it's a fairly small update in terms of the overall blueprint of the test, but I just wanted to show you how it fit into the integration of knowledge and ideas category. And what I've reproduced here is the Common Core standard that this content is designed to measure. The standard asks students to integrate and evaluate multiple sources of information presented in different media or formats, for example, visually or quantitatively, as well as in words in order to address a question or solve a problem. And that standard falls under the integration of knowledge and ideas cluster. So that's why we're adding this content to that reporting category. And I think, as I said before, but I'll just repeat it again, this content is starting to get phased in this spring. So students may see those on forms and with the target of having all new content, all new forms that are developed in the next few testing cycles will include this new reading content. So that's all of the information that I have. I'm happy that I got to share this with you today.
Well, thank you, Colin. We appreciate you joining us and providing these updates for us. Jason, do we have any questions for Colin?
I don't know if this is for Colin or for you, Sherry. I mean, you
Okay.
all can decide who answers this one. We just had a junior re-enroll from a school outside of our district. We have had that student in the past. We plan to allow her to take the ACT next week. We are testing online, but how do we get her student code to be able to complete the non-test portion of ACT? She has not made a My ACT account yet, nor completed the non-test portions. Do we call the sending district to get her code, or do we get that from KDE?
Well, I wouldn't have access to that. If you can send that to me in an email, and I will research to find how to get that student code for that student. It's a new question for me.
All right, I will forward you this email. That's the only thing we had left on ACT.
Okay, all right. Well, again, thank you, Colin. We appreciate you joining us. And at this time, since there's no additional questions, we will turn things over to Kylie Whitaker, the Assistant Director in the Division of Technical Schools and Continuous Improvement, Office of Career and Technical Education. Kylie?
Thank you very much, Shara. Appreciate it. I'm happy to be here. Happy to have the opportunity to talk to the DACs for a second. I just wanted to go through a few updates and clarifications around career and technical education, accountability and testing this year. So the first thing is that you've seen a lot of news releases and information on federal accountability being waived this year. When they say federal accountability, they are talking about ESEA federal accountability, not all federal accountability. And so the first thing that I want everyone to realize is that Perkins accountability has not been waived, and there are no indications that there's going to be any opportunity to waive that prior to any of our testing windows that we have set up. And so we will be moving forward as though accountability is going to happen this year in the Office of Career and Technical Education around Perkins. So please note that all rules around accountability that we typically follow for Perkins will continue to be in place this year. Helen, if you'll go to the next screen. So in Perkins accountability, just to make sure that everyone's aware, we have switched over to Perkins 5 accountability. The first of those is post-secondary credentials, and then academic indicators, graduation, non-traditional, and transition or follow-up. Most of those are not new, but there are slight changes to that. So post-secondary credentials looks at all concentrator students in your school and looks at how many of those concentrators earned either an industry cert or an EOP benchmark. So That is really important. In the past, it has been those who tested and those who passed. It is now all concentrators, regardless of whether they test or not, and those who pass. For the academic indicators, we are using the ACT subtest scores right now for those. If you have any questions about what those benchmarks are, please let me know. But those have been published, and those are part of our Perkins 5 indicators this year. The other three are pretty much the same as they were in Perkins 4, so I'm not going to go into that a lot. I do want to talk about this post-secondary credentials really fast. Because of the change where it is all concentrators, regardless of who tests, please note that if a parent refuses to allow their student to come in and test on one of these assessments, that student will still be in the denominator, but that you do not have to have any kind of formal approval from the Department of Ed. You'll just need to maintain there at the local level a reason for why that student did not test. But please note that student will still be in the denominator whether they test or not. However, because we know that COVID is going on right now and that the pandemic is real and that this situation is going to occur, we have put out for public comment new goals for each of these performance indicators that take into account the COVID environment that we're in. And so even though we probably will have students that are not able to come in and test, our new goals should accommodate for that. So Helen, please go to the next slide. So industry certifications, we've really tried to give out the same guidance all year for industry certifications, which is that you need to follow the vendor's guidelines for that industry certification. So some vendors have online proctoring. Some are only face-to-face. Some are not giving assessments right now, and some are. So we just want you to continue to follow those guidelines from the individual vendors. Those are not KDE assessments, and those are completely certified by the vendors. So please follow their guidance. But we do want you to give this opportunity to all students that have the chance to take those if possible. Please note that for state funds around industry certs, the deadline to ask for reimbursement is April 15th. But if a student will be taking that assessment after April 15th, you can go ahead and purchase those assessments beforehand and ask for reimbursement even before the student takes those in the case where they will not have the opportunity to take it until after that April 15th date. We are working on the new 21-22 list. We get that question all the time about this time of the year, but it will not be published until later on this summer for various reasons. So please note that it will be published, and there's a lot of factors going into that with some industry certs being phased out and everything. So we will communicate that with you probably around May or June. And then obviously at summer conference, we'll have a complete section on that at the summer conference presentations. Next slide, please. End of program assessments. We've made a change this year for several reasons. I'm not going to go into those reasons right now, but if you have questions about those, you're welcome to reach out to me. But for this year only graduating students will receive test tickets. So those are 12th graders and students that are underclassmen that have the early graduate flag marked for this year in Infinite Campus. So I have already pulled that information and sent it over to the vendor. Test tickets should be coming out sometime around the end of this week or early next week for schools to make sure and verify and validate all of their test tickets. But it will only be for 12th graders and early grads that were marked in Infinite Campus. For the EOP, we will only have in-person proctoring and in-person testing. There is no opportunity for any virtual testing at this point for the end of program CTE assessments. The testing window is open for this full amount of time, so March 22nd through April 30th. Typically, you have a 2-week window within that timeline, but this year we are leaving the testing window open for that full March 22nd through April 30th timeline. Next slide, please. With track, this Tech Ready Apprentices for Careers in Kentucky, we have the exact same testing timeline as the EOP. It will also only be in-person testing and proctoring, but the track is a employer assessment. It's not a KDE assessment. And so like all the industry certs, track is open to any student that qualifies regardless of grade level. The EOP, like I said before, is 12th grade and early grads only, but the track is more of an industry certification and it belongs to employers. And so therefore it's open to any that qualify for that assessment. Next slide, Helen. We have done a lot of work on new EOPs, especially in the engineering area, and we're so disappointed that we were not able to have those ready to go for this school year. And we're disappointed again that we were unable to pilot those this spring, but due to moving testing windows back and everything, we will not be piloting any of the new end of program assessments this year. We will be having pilots in the fall like we did this year. Unfortunately, this year, because of COVID, we just were not able to get enough participation in those pilots to get enough data to ensure that those tests were valid. And so we were not able to finish and offer those engineering assessments this year. And there's a few in other program areas as well. But please note, we normally have pilot testing in the spring. We will not be doing any kind of piloting for the EOP this spring. That will all be done in the fall and then next spring. Helen, if you want to go to the next one, that is it for me. I tried to go pretty fast through this, folks. I apologize if I went too fast. You're always welcome to reach out to me. I'm always happy to answer any questions that you have. And from what I can see, Jason, we do not have any questions. So I'm going to turn you over from Kylie to Ben Riley. So Ben.
Thank you, Kylie, and thanks for joining us today. So, hello, everyone. I am Ben Riley, the consultant working with the K-Screen process today. And I just wanted to give you guys just a couple quick reminders of some upcoming dates you may want to be aware of over the next month. So if we could go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Awesome. The first is our ordering window for the 2021-2022 school year. The window opened on March 1st and is currently open, and it will remain open until April 16th. You can find the information for completing the ordering process in the March K-Screen update. And if you have any trouble, feel free to contact me via email, and I'm happy to help you with that. On Friday, March 19th, we have our Training of Trainers Refresh webcast for experienced district trainers starting at 2 p.m. Experienced trainers are district trainers who have had the 6-hour Training of Trainers session in a previous year. KDE is going to be hosting this as a Microsoft Teams live event. And the access can be found on the link here in this PowerPoint presentation or in the March K-Screen update. Curriculum Associates and myself will be joining afterwards for a 30-minute question and answer session about the training presentation and any questions you have regarding the K-Screen process. And then finally, we have our big Training of Trainers event coming up on March 26th for new district trainers. This is the 6-hour training for inexperienced district trainers. Please make sure you sign up no later than March 24th at 5 p.m. for that training. The training will begin at 9 a.m. and lasts until 2 p.m. And if you are a new DAC or BAC and have not had the K-Screen training, please make plans to attend. You can find the link to the Google form in this presentation later, or you can check our K-Screen update in March for that. So thanks again for having me on, and I'm going to go ahead and transition it back over to Kevin O'Hare, who's going to talk about some important K-Prep reminders. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Ben, and we appreciate that. And good morning to all of our friends in the Eastern Time, or good afternoon to our friends in the Eastern Time Zone, and good morning to our friends in the Western or Central Time Zone. So we do appreciate everyone joining us this morning for the March DAC Webcast. Helen, if you could advance to the next slide, please. And today we just want to share, I just have some very quick reminders. You know, we're right in the thick of things with the spring assessment windows coming up. I know we've talked about a little bit this morning about access testing already in full swing, and then We are moving right along to alternate K-Prep coming up within the next 2 weeks, as well as, our spring K-Prep or K-Prep administration right around the corner. So we want to highlight some very important dates for you to remember. Is, the first one, that March 16th, Pearson Access Next, or PAN, will open to create test sessions. So today being the 11th, that's just 5 days away. PAN will open to create test sessions. And then on March 30th, the K-Prep state test window will officially open. So that will be 2 weeks from the March 16th date when the Pearson Access Next window opens to create those test sessions. That the K-Prep state testing window will run from March 30th through June the 16th. Our test administration manual and grade level scripts, those are nearing completion. So we will post those very, very soon. We are working on getting those completed with Pearson and getting those ready to post very soon. One thing to note is you will not have a DAC back manual this year. There will just be one test administration manual that will be specific to all grades as far as overall general information shared out around online testing and paper pencil testing. And then you will have grade specific scripts this year. So there will be one TAM that will provide all the general information, and then you will have grade specific scripts. And one thing we also want to note, for those requesting or requiring paper pencil, whether it be Braille or large print, you will be able to order accommodated test materials beginning on March 16th, and those will run through June 14th. So you will order those accommodated test materials. Those will be done through Pearson Access Next in PAN. All right, Helen, if you could advance to the next slide. Okay, move ahead to the next one. So now we're going to talk about the alternate K-Prep. As we've noted, it is right upon us. And so just to share some quick dates to be familiar with, this past Monday, March the 8th, the Student Registration Database, the SRD, as well as the Career Readiness Database, or the CRD, opened for DAC level review. So if you're a DAC or you have provided access to your Director of Special Education or your Building Assessment Coordinator, or maybe you have a consultant that handles this, the SRD and the CRD are available for review. You can go in and look at your rosters for the SRD. For your CRD, you're probably not going to see any grade 12 students listed in there right now. I did confirm with Daryl Mattingly yesterday that he is working on that upload, and those students are beginning to populate in. So those should be there within the next few days. The SRD, if you have students that's there and needs to be transferred, you can work with our office, or you can actually email Daryl Mattingly at daryl.mattingly@uky.edu if you need a student to be transferred. Next week, actually beginning on March 16th through the 19th, you'll start to see alternate K-Prep materials arrive in the district. Remember, all materials are going to arrive at once since we have combined the testing window. And then on March the 28th, or March 22nd, excuse me, I'm getting ahead of myself. On March 22nd, the alternate K-Prep test administration will open to schools and districts across the state. It's not mandatory that you start on March 22nd, but that is the first day that the alternate K-Prep test administration is available to begin. And then May the 28th will be the last day that test administration for the alternate K-Prep test window. The transition attainment record will be available for completion. If anyone needs to administer beyond that date, you would need to contact our office to request an extension based upon reasons why that additional time would be necessary. And then the last date to share with everyone is that on June the 4th, that is the last day to enter scores in the SRD or the CRD. That's a pretty hard date, just because we have to be able to compile the data that's within those databases and get those ready to move forward to our data team here at the department, as well as our vendors to share out for any type of reporting that may be done. So that's just a very quick overview of some upcoming dates around K-Prep and alternate K-Prep. And I'll look to Jason. Jason, do we have any questions? All right.
We have 0 questions.
All right. Thanks, Jason. At this time, I will now turn things over to Jennifer Stafford.
Thank you, Kevin. And thanks to all of our presenters so far today. We are moving along. It's a little after noon Eastern time, so district assessment coordinators, we know you're busy people. If you need to go to your next meeting or move on from here, this broadcast, the link will be shared. But we've got a couple other notes that we want to make you aware of as in terms of assessment and accountability. So the first one is the tentatively scheduled Spring 2021 Social Studies Field Test. And Helen, if you'll move to the next slide. The purpose of a field test is to test out or try items that will eventually become operational. So a field test is one of the pieces in the process of creating an operational assessment. A field test allows students to interact with items that could potentially go into an operational assessment and then eventually become part of a score that would contribute to school accountability. So we want to, along the way of creating an operational assessment, to check the items to ensure that they are intending and assessing what students know and are able to do. We want to make sure that those items are fair, they're accurate, and they meet the high quality standards of assessment development. So it's important to have field tests of items prior to any operational assessment. So the Office of Assessment Accountability, we are seeking your interest in participating in the social studies field test of the new social studies standards. Those standards were adopted and have gone through the regulatory process to make them part of the Kentucky Academic Standards. And we want to be able to provide students the opportunity to engage with these items to ensure their accuracy so that when they are eventually put into an accountability or an operational assessment, then those are items that perform as they should. So if your district is interested in participating in a social studies field test, we ask that you complete the social studies field test survey by Monday, March 22nd. So that gives you just a little bit over a week and a half for our district assessment coordinators to complete that survey. So with the inclusion, if you are interested in that as a district, complete the survey one way or the other. So whether you're interested or whether you're not interested, we need you to complete the survey so that we understand who is interested in being part of the social studies field test and who is not interested in being part of the social studies field test. If you so choose to be included, then you're making the commitment for all of your schools across all of the grade levels. So social studies is field tested for this spring, if we're able to do that, at grades 5, 8, and 11. So if you as a district assessment coordinator complete that survey and say, yes, your district is interested, then you are committing all of your schools with those particular grade levels. So we appreciate you very much completing that social studies field test survey for the upcoming spring. So please consider whether or not you would like to be part of that. I do think that we already have people who have completed that survey, so we appreciate those people that are in there and completing the survey. But of course, others, you may have to have further discussions with your district leadership, your superintendent, and so forth, before you're able to make that commitment. So we appreciate you very much completing the survey, and then look forward to seeing who is interested. Now, we will note that we do have to have good representation across all of our student demographic groups. So all of our students across all of the different types of services or with our race and ethnicity. Also, we need high and low performing students or schools to participate. So we do reserve the right to come to some schools and ask for particular schools to participate. So we may be making some calls and friendly requests to be participants if we don't get a good representative sample. If we're not able to get the social studies field test in this spring, then we will have to look at a fall administration, and a fall administration would be look a little bit different. So again, appreciate your consideration of being part of that social studies field test this spring. The next topic we have is on the waiver and the waiver requests from school accountability. So Helen, if you'll move to the next slide, please. I want to make sure that you as district assessment coordinators are updated on where we stand at the currently with school identification and waivers. So as we've mentioned before, want to go back to where we left off last monthly DAC Webcast. We had received in September, we received a letter from then Secretary Betsy DeVos to state that schools and districts, states should prepare for state testing. In January, we received, Chief State School Officers received another letter from the U.S. Department of Education indicating that schools should prepare to test their English language learners. On February 22nd, we received a letter from the U.S. Department of Education that did allow for some flexibilities. So there was a special DAC email as well as a press release that identified the areas of flexibility that the U.S. Department of Education is considering. The first of which is accountability and school identification, not assessments. So with the letter to Chief State School Officers on the February 22nd, they are opening the doors for states to apply for waivers from school identification and that annually meaningfully differentiating of schools. So in the past, what we've done in Kentucky, we had the stars with the accountability moving to more colors and that type of display. Then the state does plan to apply for a waiver from that annual meaningful differentiation. So with that waiver, we'll be asking from relief from that annual meaningful differentiation and those accountability measures. So that means those big indicators of like proficiency and separate academic indicator, quality of school climate and safety survey, those indicators that go into the accountability system, those are the pieces that we anticipate getting a waiver from. We anticipate also in this letter will be the relief from the identification of comprehensive support and improvement schools, targeted support and improvement schools, and additional targeted and support improvement schools. So the department is offering the opportunity for states to apply for those waivers, and Kentucky will apply for those waivers. Now, in that letter on the 22nd, they indicated that there will be still maintained this requirement of transparency and public reporting. So if you were able to join any of the question and answer sessions that we've had in the previous 2 weeks, we did share that the department is maintaining that all state and local report card requirements are still in place. So those indicators or those measures such as state performance or student performance on state assessments will still be required to be publicly reported. So specifically for students who participate in state assessments, those performance for those schools will be required to be publicly reported. In addition to that, we will also have to report participation in those state required assessments. So participation means that those students that participate and who do not participate in the state assessments. So both of these two areas, both performance and participation, will be required to be disaggregated by our different student demographic groups. So again, those pieces are of public transparency, and those requirements to maintain the school report card is not being waived. Also, what's not being waived are the requirements around our state assessments. And as we've mentioned many times on this broadcast, that we thought that there was more flexibility around accountability than there were around assessments, and indeed that is what happened. So the department is offering waivers from assessment on aspects of the assessment, such as a shortened form or remote administration and things of that nature, things that we are planning for anyway, as far as a shortened form of the K-Prep assessments where we can, and then also the flexibility around the windows. So with the flexibility around the windows, we've pushed back and postponed all the windows as far as we possibly could. Chris Williams mentioned that access testing started just a week ago, and Kevin O'Hare mentioned that alternate K-Prep wasn't going to start until the next few weeks. So those flexibilities we are already taking advantage of. So with that, those flexibilities, the department has also invited us to complete a template. And the template is linked on slide 38 or 39 for you, and you'll hopefully be able to link to that template and see the areas specific to the waiver. So again, where we are currently is that on March 8th, the U.S. Department of Education shared a template with us in order to complete and submit seeking waivers from those school accountability pieces. So again, you can look toward those template, and that's on slide 38, that you can link to and see the template and see what is part of the template waiver and what's then not part of the waiver. So again, I want to just make sure that everybody is up to date as far as we are now. So as far as the timeline for submitting that waiver, I will say that the department will do that very soon. We feel like that it is a situation that we need to take appropriate time with and make sure that it is accurate as we apply for those waivers, but also we feel the urgency to get it completed and submitted to the U.S. Department of Education. So again, we received the waiver March 8th, and we anticipate completing that and submitting it to the department very soon. So let me pause at this point. Jason, do we have any questions about any of the last few items? We've had the social studies field test. We've had the update on the accountability and the accountability waiver. Do we have anything, any questions?
You have quite a few questions. So
okay, great.
Yeah. So the first one, and this one is I feel like more than a yes or no, because maybe a little nuanced. So the field test is not mandatory for districts, correct?
It is not mandatory for districts, correct. But we may make friendly calls to DACs and say that we need participation. in the social studies field test. So it is not required. It is an option at this point.
Yeah. So, and then when would we administer the social studies field test?
Oh, that's a great question, and I apologize for not mentioning that. It would be the last day of your district's test window. So you'll go through all of your operational assessments, and then it would be the last day of your window. So, and also the social studies field test is scheduled for 1 hour as well. So that is, again, a shorter time frame. We've reduced it to have the minimal impact of the with your students and with your instruction. So again, we're tentatively scheduling this right now. If you are committing to it, then we will hold you to that commitment if possible. And we do understand that, you know, we're still in a pandemic as well, and that things are changing and schedules are changing in that. But we do want to know if you do have the interest in that, so that if we don't have the interest, then we'll have to regroup and possibly do something in the fall.
Okay. Will KDE seek the 95% participation waiver from the U.S. Department of Education?
That is a great question, and also that is part of the waiver. So if you go to slide 38 and click on that waiver, the 95% participation is part of that waiver. So yes, Kentucky will apply for that 95% for participation in that waiver. So that template, again, does include waiving that 95%. And we will, because we do not anticipate getting 95%. And so we're very glad that the department included that as an option for states, because I think they realize that at this point, not all students are going to return to in-person instruction, and therefore they allowed states to apply for that. So Kentucky will apply for that waiver.
Has KDE considered allowing any of the required state testing to occur in the fall?
That's a good question as well. So at this point, we've got, we're working with our vendors on possible options. However, we're just exploring what's available to us at this point and to schools, but the answer would be no. We have not made any type of plans to test in the fall. However, with full transparency, we are asking our vendors if it's a possibility or not, because we want to be prepared if testing is not able to be accomplished this spring. So yes, so that's not something that we are going to implement at this point. But you know, it's about 12:30 on March 11th, and so that can certainly change.
Has KDE considered allowing test window extensions beyond what is already scheduled?
And I'm going to assume that's for K-Prep. Yes, we have. And if you have the need to test longer than the 14 days, if you don't think that you can get your testing accomplished in 14 days, then I would ask you to email dacinfo@education.ky.gov with the specific dates of information that you need. And specifically, and we can put this in an entry into Monday's email, we'll look for your original dates of your test window, those additional dates that you would need, and then specifically how many students that you would be testing on those additional dates. So again, we want to be as flexible as possible, but we also want to understand what's happening in your district.
Okay. A viewer has requested, can you please explain the public reporting again?
Sure. The public reporting is part of the requirements from the U.S. Department of Education, and they are maintaining all of the requirements for the school report card. So all of those pieces around the assessment still stands. They are not providing relief from those public reporting. So when we think about public reporting in the fall, as we are anticipating to report and make transparent the performance of schools that test this spring and the performance of the students within those schools. So you could imagine that in the fall that we have publicly reported 4 state assessments: novice, proficient, apprentice, proficient, distinguished percentages. You could anticipate that there will be participation of students in student demographic groups for those demographic groups who tested and didn't test. So we're looking at both performance as well as participation disaggregated by student group. So again, those are some of the things that we are just working with our school report card vendor right now. They've also noted in that February 22nd letter that the state must report like chronic absenteeism data and access to technology and high-speed internet and things of that nature, which are already pieces of public reporting that has been in the past. So Kentucky is moving forward with developing school report card right now based on what those required pieces are from the U.S. Department of Education.
Okay. We have one more question. I saved the easiest one for last because I've always been told you end on a high note, so you rush this one out of the park. Is the social studies field test online or paper and pencil?
Oh, another good. It is online. It is online. Okay. It is an online field test. And so, Jason, do you have anything to add to that on accommodations?
There will be paper and pencil available for like Braille and large print. And then if a kid, for instance, couldn't, for some reason had a disability, they could not test online, we do have paper kits for them as well, but those require a IEP review and things like that from the department. But I'd say 98% will be online.
Great.
And that's the questions we had. Great job, Jennifer.
Thank you. And thanks for being our facilitator here, Jason, with our questions. And thanks to all of our presenters today. We had a great bit of information to share for you. We shared details on each of our assessment programs. We shared information on upcoming waivers. Thanks to our special guest, Colin from ACT, as well as Kylie Whitaker. We also thank our consultants, Chris Williams, Shara Savage, Ben Riley, and Kevin O'Hare. And thanks to Helen for managing, as she always does, our PowerPoint presentation. And thank you all for your participation, and thank you for your efforts on state testing. We wish you the best, and we will see you back here next month. Take care.